Bellagio Poker Room, Rose speaking.
Hi Rose, can you put Andrew on the 510 please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pretty sure I managed to win approximately 3 hands all night and lose approximately 300 hands all night. Just miserable. Rough go tonight. I can give a couple of examples. There was one hand where I folded around to the cutoff, who opens for 30. I looked down at pocket aces on the button, and I think I make it 100. The big blind cold calls and the cutoff calls as well. So 3 ways to a flop. Flop comes jack high, pretty wet board. So when the action checks to me, I just decided to check it back and pot control here. I don't want to get raised in this spot because I can't call down with 1 pair on this kind of a board. So that's my thinking when I check it back on the flop. Turn pairs the jack and the big blind leads out. Bet's kind of small, somewhat on the small side I think. I think he bet around $130 maybe. The cutoff calls and I don't think I can fold just yet. Underwrapped my hand big time. So I make the call and we are off to a river 3 ways, which comes a brick. This time the big blind checks and the cutoff puts out a bet this time of somewhere in the neighborhood of like 240, 220 or 240. I have some history with this player. I've played with him a decent amount lately over the past year or so, and he's a pretty solid player. So after thinking about it for a long time, I decided that he probably doesn't have queens here, probably doesn't have kings here, and he's probably not value betting any possible hands that are worse than mine. So while he could have some potentially some missed bluffs, some missed draws as bluffs, just don't really see that many in his range. I think he might try to get the showdown with a lot of them because they could have pairs.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
So after some thought, I fold and the big blind snap calls. So we get to see a showdown here, and the cutoff shows us pocket 7s or flop set, turn full house. So we lose pretty close to the minimum, at least with that hand, and we move on. A couple hours later, stuck a decent amount now, and the action folds around to the cutoff once again. Different player though this time. $30 open from the cutoff. The button calls, small blind folds, and I'm in the big blind with ace king. And I want to put it in a raise here. Late position open versus ace king in the blinds. Pretty close to the top of my range here. So I put in a 3 bet to $150. The original raiser calls and the button folds. So heads up to a flop, king, jack, small card. I think a 3. King, jack, 3 with 2 hearts. Pretty good flop. Gonna try and get some value. I decided on the down bet. I go for the bet of 130. My opponent thinks for a little bit and he makes the call. Turn is another low card, bringing a second flush draw on board. I believe it's the deuce of clubs. So board is pretty wet now with 2 flush draws and potential straight draws out there. So definitely need to size up at least a little bit here. So I go for a $400 bet this time on the turn. My opponent thinks for a little while and once again makes the call. So we're off to a river card, which is probably gonna be an interesting card. And sure enough, it's the deuce of hearts. So the front door flush comes in. I don't block any flush draws, I don't think. So I decide to check it over to him, and my opponent checks back pretty quickly. So that should be good news. I roll it over, and my opponent shows us king jack off suit. So, yeah, not really going my way this evening, to say the least. Once again, we probably could have lost a lot more in that hand, and I was never all in at any one point in this evening's session. Never any real big pots. That was probably the biggest pot that I played. So I got into this game for $4,000 and out of this game for like $1371, I think. Lose about 2.6K on the evening. Just another Thursday here in Vegas, March Madness. Back to it, hopefully tomorrow. Try and rectify the situation a little bit. Hopefully get some playtime. Back to it then.
All right, guys, Friday evening here, and as you can see, not at the Bellagio, not the usual spot, at a property that doesn't even have a poker room. We're here at the SLS Hotel. This is towards the north end of the strip. I'm sure you guys are mostly familiar. No poker room, which means actually not playing poker this evening. So Busi and I are actually over here just having a casual, a nice dinner at a restaurant called Clio. It reminds me of a question that somebody asked me recently. The question came from somebody who was at a concert, and they sent me a direct message, and the question was, should I feel bad about thinking about poker this entire time I'm at this concert and just wanting to get back to the tables as soon as possible? My answer was actually yes, you should feel bad about that. Let me rephrase that a little bit. I don't know if you should feel bad about it. It's awesome that you are so eager. It's awesome to be so eager to be on the grind, and want to get after it and stay on that grind, get work done, accomplish things. That's great. But the fact of the matter is, you chose the concert. You're not going to be able to solve poker while you're thinking about it at the concert. I think the thing to do is to sort of just be in the moment. Yes, I think you should be putting in a lot of hours on the grind. Of course, if you're out with some poker playing friends and you guys want to talk about poker, that's something different. But if you're with some non-poker playing friends, like I am tonight, the thing to do is to just be present, just enjoy the moment. All right, we're back. We're back in the office. Getting back after it here after this gelato. $6 a scoop, obviously, of course, but gonna head back in there. A lot of people here in the sports book, and a lot of games to be found in the poker room. 4 or 5. I think there's 10 games going on, and it's only the early afternoon, so should be plenty of action to be found. First gelato, then poker. Let's go. Today was, without a doubt, one of the most ridiculous sessions, filled with some of the most ridiculous hands that I've played, possibly ever. You know it's a weird day, weird evening, weird session when there's just some random ducks hanging out here at the Bellagio.
All right, well, it's way past my bedtime now. It's almost 4 in the morning, which not what I'm aiming for, not the schedule I'm trying to be on. So I'm just gonna shoot home, crash, hit the sack, and then as soon as I wake up, report some of these hands, and they are some ridiculous ones. Either from home, or maybe we'll go somewhere fun, or maybe we'll be back here at the Bellagio. And we're back. It's now Sunday. March Madness weekend number 1 just caught the tail end of Michigan State's bowing out to Syracuse in the second round, which is kind of disappointing. Unfortunate. Not what we came here to talk about. We came here to talk about some hands from last night. Yesterday's session was a wild one. Some craziness. Let's kick it off with the usual holdings. Pocket aces in the cutoff. I opened it up to $30 in the cutoff. Both blinds make the call, so 3 ways to a flop, which comes Jack 3-3 rainbow. Very safe flop. Don't have to bet too big here when they check it over to me, so I bet $40. Small blind folds right away. Big blind inquires about how much it is, and then he makes the call. Turn's a pretty favorable card for us. Turn is the ace of clubs. Puts up a backdoor flush draw, but gives us the virtual nuts here. When he checks it over to me, I debate for a little bit between betting and checking back. I think he's probably gonna have to fold a decent amount of his range because he doesn't beat too many of my holdings now. If he happens to have ace jack, that's great, but we obviously block that hand pretty heavily. If he has a 3, that would be cool, but kind of unlikely for him to have one of those. So I decide on the check back, and we go off to a river card, offsuit king, and this time he leads into me, which is great news. He bets $210. now it's looking like maybe he does have a 3, or maybe he has ace jack or something like that. We're somewhere around $1,900 here effective, and it's obviously time for a raise, so I stack some chips together to the tune of $680, slide that out into the middle. My opponent does not snap fold, so that's some good news. And further good news is that he ships it in there. He jams all in. Obviously, make the snap call here. I almost just pretty happily just turn my cards over in these situations, and I do that. And the happiness does not last too long before my opponent shows us pocket 3s for flopped quads. Oh man. Just a disaster. Disastrous hand. Disastrous turn card for us. No way that we don't lose the absolute maximum in this hand. It's impossible for us to lose anything less than the maximum there. Sometimes we like to say that online poker is rigged. Well, I don't know if it can get too much more rigged looking than this hand. So yeah, that's pretty unfortunate, and time to reload. Pull out the reload chips. So in this hand, the hijack opens for $30. Cutoff calls. I look down at pocket 6s on the button, and I make the call as well. 3 ways to a flop with $100 in the middle. Flop comes 7-6 deuce rainbow. Middle set for us this time. Action checks over to us. No c-bet unfortunately, so I put in some money. Try and build a pot here, so I bet $60. The initial raiser calls, and the player in the middle folds. So heads up to a turn card, which comes pretty favorable for us. Another 6. Quads now on the river, have this hand locked up. Action checks over to me again, and I don't want to just check it back. I want to keep building a pot. Stuck city over here. How are we going to get unstuck by checking back? So the 6 is actually an interesting card, not just because we make quads, but because I might not bet the 6 on the flop. Not all the time, at least. I could bet it since I can deny equity from some overcard holdings, but I wouldn't always bet it since it's second pair on board. So when I bet it again on the turn, it looks somewhat suspicious, I think. So I decided to bet. I bet $130, and my opponent doesn't fold, doesn't call, he puts in a raise, which is pretty much the sweetest moment in poker when you have quads and someone is raising into you. He makes it, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of $440. I don't think there's too much point in doing anything other than flat calling here in position, so that's what I do. I put in the call, and we're off to a river card, which I don't think changes too much. It's an offsuit 9. We're somewhere around $1,200 or $1,300 effective going into this river card, and my opponent, after thinking for some time, delivers the good news, jams all in there. You know what happens after that. I call, and I go ahead and show down, and my opponent is in a little bit of surprise, a little bit of shock, mainly because he's holding pocket 7s. So I don't know what is happening here today at the Bellagio on March Madness Saturday, but there is some madness to be found in the poker room. Some super rigged hands, just some super ridiculousness happening here at the poker table. We turn the 1-outer. You might remember that a long time ago for you dedicated vlog watchers, we got 1-outed at the Gardens Casino in Los Angeles, and I think we were due for a 1-outer, and came at a pretty good time. So pretty good pot here, to say the least. I managed to get a photo of the wreckage, the carnage afterwards.
Wow, that was pretty sick.
So we end up getting a decent amount of the losses back in that hand. Grinded it out for a while thereafter, but wasn't able to get out of the hole completely, and finished the session stuck around $500. Couldn't find enough craziness run good in our corner to get back into the black for the evening. So still very much in the hole for the weekend thus far. March Madness not going as we might have drawn it up, but what can you do? Got to try and play better, got to try and run better, and not put too much pressure on ourselves, which I often do on these big weekends, and I don't think that's good for anybody. We'll see what kind of craziness develops today. I'm expecting less craziness from yesterday, considering how insane that was. We're skipping the gelato today, heading right in there. Let's get after it. Let's go.
disaster, total disaster. This weekend is officially and completely a poker disaster. Pretty painful. And as you can guess, today did not go any better. Worse than yesterday and about as equally bad as the first day. Pretty disappointing and pretty frustrating. Certainly some run good mixed in there with the vast majority of run bad, and definitely some play bad on my part. It's only to be expected, I think, when you're finding yourself in some pretty terrible situations over and over again. Probably going to compound it a little bit with some play bad, at least. I'm not immune to that, and just a really frustrating weekend. Managed to get it in with trips versus pair of aces and lose that one for $1,000. Flop ourselves top pair with ace king in a 5-way pot, raise the flop up to like 350. That's gonna be no good on the turn. Turn goes check check and puts out a $600 river bet, which I don't think I can fold there, especially versus a recreational player. Having the ace of clubs in my hand, I feel a little bit validated by the $600 river call, since he proceeded to dust off about $1,000, bluffing it off not even a half hour later, and not to me, unfortunately, but makes me feel okay about my river call. And yeah, just this over and over again throughout the weekend, making second best hands for the most part. Into the game for $4,700, cash out for $23.50 something. So we end up losing like $23.50. So what do you do? Where do you go from here? Back to the grind. I'll be back after it very shortly. Obviously I can't get right back to it because I have to edit this video, plus do a couple of other things, some admin here and there. So unfortunately, can't get back to it as fast as I would like to, but that's all you can do. And maybe I'll go play some 2-5, maybe try and get some confidence back, but maybe not. Maybe I'll just come back. It depends how the games are. What's to be learned? Not too sure. I've been firing lots of hands over to my buddy Benton, and he's kind enough to answer every single question that I have, so that's awesome. But yeah, it's frustrating. Wish I had a happier ending to this weekend, to this video, but I don't. This is poker. This is professional poker. Try and keep some perspective. Try and think about some other things that are going on in the world that are much worse than this temporary situation. And by the way, where does this put our LASIK challenge? I'll tell you where it puts it. As my friend Kim Lim would say, in shambles. It puts it in total shambles. Poker downswings, they don't care if you're waiting on new eyes. Well, we're gonna do it, we'll get there. It's gonna take a little bit longer. We're gonna have to win twice as much in order to get there now, but the only thing that can stop us is just, you know, the usual repeated suckouts and bad play. But don't worry, we'll get there, promise.